Hello, this is part 2 of a two-part response to Body Language Guy responding to Meghan and Harry at the UN. A link to part 1 is in the description.
His face changed completely. There's no way of not spotting that.
I mean, of course his face changed. That's what faces do. They're constantly changing expressions. We don't just stay in one mode all the time. We alternate between smiling and looking content and looking sad at points. It's the natural way that humans are, that we've always been. Like, how should his face look as he's listening to other speakers and waiting his turn to speak? Like this? There are so many pictures of, really all celebrities, but specifically of Kate and William looking less than happy. We'll put it like that. And, their expressions ebb and flow too. Sometimes they're smiling, sometimes they're frowning, sometimes they look content or bored. That's just human. That's what humans do. You trying to manipulate your audience or stoke in the portion of your audience that already feels those prejudices against Meghan especially, but the couple as a duo is, in addition to being manipulative, is very cruel. It's a very cruel thing what you're doing. And the glee in your face as you do it, it's so monstrous. This is such monstrous behavior. To get joy out of picking on people and lying about them for money is monstrous.
Let's put play to see what happens next. They remain in that position. He is unusually stiff. Look at his neck, it's totally straight. It's not moving that much.
So this is one of those times I thought it best to play the clip muted after hearing his assessment, just so you can watch the behavior without his manipulative rhetoric telling you what to see to serve his maligning narrative. So let's try some empathy here. Can you imagine sitting at an event where you're about to give a speech and taking a moment to think about some of the lines in your speech, or having a moment of contemplating some of the things you've heard other speakers say so far, or even having a typical parent moment of thinking about your kid who maybe just got over an earache or something, and then some unprofessional, questionably educated, misogynist and sexist taking the clip of you waiting your turn to speak and contemplating random unknown thoughts and using it to argue that you're a victim of your wife's touch, which was clearly demonstrated, according to them, by you not wobbling your neck to and fro for like 3 seconds straight, despite just about everyone around you also having prolonged moments of sitting with necks unmoving, because that too is inevitable, human, and normal in a setting like this. So to their very hateful and prejudiced fan base, they reframe you and you alone doing something normal, like sitting still and straight for a few seconds as something negative. Yeah, my heart goes out to Harry and Meghan. And you know, just for good measure, I'm gonna play that clip muted one more time. And then here's the clip again with that dishonest and manipulative commentary. And I'm gonna let it just roll into the next part of this video of his that I wanted to respond to.
Let's put play to see what happens next. They remain that position. He is unusually stiff. Look at his neck, it's totally straight. It's not moving that much. And then he tries to relax a bit. She lets go of him. He begins to, turn his ring, his wedding ring, twisting it. She begins to touch him. This is a bit more casual, a bit more normal.
So I guess it's to be expected that he would ignore their positive chemistry and their observably pleasant interaction there, because of course it's inconvenient for the misogynistic and slanderous narrative he's meaning to push and bully them with. But as for the rest of the clip, well, this is the clip that I played earlier, prematurely actually, to argue that Harry putting his arm in Meghan's lap in response to her touching his forearm was a choice, was his choice, because here we see her touch his arm in the same way, but this time he chooses to keep that arm in his own lap. That's his choice. That's what he wanted at each time. Men, believe it or not, are a powerful sex. They are actually, overwhelmingly, the empowered and in power sex everywhere, even in the West. They make choices to benefit themselves constantly, most of the time actually. Meghan didn't pull or force Harry's arm into her lap now or then. He placed it there because he wanted to, and because she let him. So there was no claw, or quote-unquote double claw, as this prejudiced misogynist accused earlier. I'm gonna play the clips back to back, but muted. First, the one from earlier where he chose to put his arm in her lap, and then this one again where he chooses not to, just so you can see for yourself. There's a dangerous level of patriarchal blame the woman philosophy in our culture, in most cultures actually. Meghan's hand was going along for the ride as he moved it into her lap. Not that this is even a huge deal, but for women it is. The small things are always blown out of proportion. So every little thing has the potential to become a huge thing, a huge indictment against her character. Like, this little thing could be and is to some people, for some people, a sign of her literally being evil. Evil. This. Even if she did, it's just like at worst it's neediness. It's not like malicious. But it's not even that. It's if you look, It's just her letting something happen, not forcing something to happen. Her hand's like a passenger on the plane that is his arm, careening into her lap. It's cute, if anything. But when it's a woman, or more when it's a targeted woman, everything she does, or everything done around her, is like, it's reframed as demonic, and it's effective. It's scarily effective how easy it is for people to view women as demonic and devilish and evil for the most tiny, I even hesitate to call them transgressions because they're not even transgressions most of the time. So I'll say debatable, quote unquote, transgressions. Again, meanwhile, you have men leveling whole countries, and it's just like, well, that's what men do. Meanwhile, a woman holding her husband's arm in her lap inspires like 50 videos for commentary, while men are like destroying countries. That doesn't seem odd to you. Which one, even you, viewer, whoever you are, wherever you lean, even you feel more compelled to care about what the woman is doing? Because most people have that bias. Most people have a misogynistic bias. Most people are subconsciously, if not consciously, more easily irritated by the annoying actions of women than the heinous actions of men. Why is that? Why do you think that is? These are the things, these are the biases that impact how people interpret male versus female, quote unquote, body language and behavior and actions and inaction. We're not starting from a fair or level playing field here. It's how the Salem witch trials could even happen, where there's such a widespread derangement in people that they're accusing women of like evil, being wicked over like motions and gestures like this. Like, it's no wonder you read about the Salem witch trials, and you know, your mind, and well, my mind had trouble when I originally learned about them accepting that that could even happen, even with a less educated version of society. But, you know, we're like 400, 500 years out from that, and that mentality has not disappeared. That thing in people that makes them so ready to accuse women of not exactly witchcraft, although some do, some call her a witch, there are a lot of targeted women who just flat out get called witches still. But then, like, because for most that sounds a bit too crazy, there's like new language that is effectively saying the same thing, like the way narcissist has been given these borderline magical properties. So like now narcissists, when female, cannot be abused. They just have this ultimate power over everyone they talk to and interact with and are in relationships with. And people are diagnosing this thing that is very it needs a very thorough examination to be diagnosed in someone. But people just, with these, who, you know, have this bias of distrusting women, of not liking women, of, you know, prejudices against women of color, they're now deeming themselves experts enough to declare who and who isn't a narcissist. This is so strange to me that it makes me doubt when they say this, because almost all of them will say it's because they dealt with a narcissist. Like, all of them will say, oh, I dated a narcissist for 5 years, my husband was a narcissist. And weirdly, it's usually a man that they're referring to. That's their reference point, is a male narcissist. they supposedly knew, who makes them now clairvoyant and basically also like mind readers who can just sense magically. We always get into the mythical here with these conversations because there's almost never proof of anything. It's all just feelings and vibes. And to quote someone whose video I saw recently, we're making judgments based on vibes now. We're like deliberating innocence and guilt based on vibes. That's very dangerous because people already have biases for men against women, and then you're just telling yourself, oh, I just sense in my spirit that this woman is not trustworthy and is, evil and, spawn of the devil. I just sense it in my soul. This is not a reliable mind frame to do any judgment. And you are not a reliable person to be making these judgments. And again, I'm just very aware because I've engaged with people who hate her, who hate Meghan, and they are very resistant to facts. They just, so it's like that's when it led me to sort of realize it's not even like, at least some of the time, it's not even like mentally unwell people who believe their own hype. It's people who like knowingly are pushing falsehoods because I present a fact and they're like, well, and then they start calling, me names, and it's like, I thought I like maybe foolishly thought we were having an actual exchange here, but clearly not. Clearly, it was never about getting to the bottom of what's true. It was about needing to hold on to this so you have an excuse to bully a woman without people being very aware that you're a monster. Because again, if you can hide behind, well, she is a bad person, so that justifies me treating her inhumanely, then that justifies it for many that you're treating her so inhumanely, because as you have argued, she's a bad person. But when you don't have that, when you can't hold on to all the things that make her bad, because when you examine them closely, they don't hold up to scrutiny, and then you're just left with the reality of you being the monster here, who is just having fun being cruel to a human. That's no good.
She begins to touch him. This is a bit more casual, a bit more normal. But there is again something that I want to show you in this same clip. Right after this, he begins. There's a clip that he's giving the speech, and then look at this. Harry is going back to his seat. This is important to understand the dynamics of the Harkles as a relationship.
So this part actually is very important, crucial even, for understanding just how unintelligent and manipulative and dishonest body language guy is, and how ironically bad at reading people and situations he is, when this is supposed to be his expertise. It's wild. So I'm gonna let it play through, and then it's gonna be a clip that I let play longer than I have in the past so far. But I'm gonna let it play through, and then I'll come back in with pointing out the obvious.
He sits down. Everything fine so far. He's shaking hands with the people around. Meghan is also, smiling. He begins to talk to this man to his left, okay? Getting nearer so he can listen. I can guess that there's a lot of noise at that moment in the hall, so you can get nearer so you can listen to the person next to you. Okay, he looks interested, invested. He even reaches out with his right hand to touch him in a friendly movement, a friendly gesture. He shakes his hand. Okay, and it's like Meghan can't stand watching Harry behaving like that? Because she instantly, what does she do 1 second after? She touches him again. She raises her hand to touch him again. Like, you remember that touch. I've analyzed that touch on Harry a couple times. It's like a cue. You remember that cue? Remember what that cue means? That cue means stop doing whatever you're doing now, okay? That's the cue, and he literally stops what he is doing, and she does it again, okay? He is trying to engage with the man to his left, and she keeps touching him, like, hey, I'm here. She's doing it again. I don't know why is she so needy doing it over and over again. It's uncomfortable to watch.
Okay, so that was the full clip. Now let's break it down in parts.
He sits down. Everything fine so far. He's shaking hands with the people around. Meghan is also, well, like smiling. He begins to talk to this man to his left, okay? Like getting nearer so he can listen. I can guess that there's a lot of noise at that moment in the hall, so you can get nearer so you can listen to the person next to you. Okay, he looks interested, invested. He even reaches out with his right hand to touch him in a friendly movement, a friendly gesture. He shakes his hand, okay, and it's like Meghan can't stand watching Harry behaving like that, because she instantly, what does she do 1 second after? She touches him again. She raises her hand to touch him again.
So let's watch it together without his commentary. So we see Harry has arrived back at his seat, and now this guy to his left is engaging him, possibly commenting on the speech that he just gave with compliment, some kind of praise perhaps, and it's still paused. Okay, and then they exchange this happy pleasantry that makes them both laugh. It feels like a compliment sort of vibe. Then we see on the far left, the left of the guy Harry is interacting directly with, there is another guy who is giving a thumbs up to, it looks like Meghan. It looks like he's communicating with Meghan, saying something like, because he's kind of pointing at Harry with that gesture of a thumb. I'm going to let it replay. And in doing so, sort of, it looks like he's saying something like, I don't know, like, you got a good one, or he's good, or something that is about Harry, but directed to Meghan. So, we're replaying, and just watch it back. Like, I think honest people got this. I feel like I'm just saying something so obvious here. But yes, look at this guy. He's engaging Meghan. And then, so she, like, it looks like a response like, yeah, I got a good one, or yeah, he's great. Something like that is what it looks like is the four-way interaction here. It's like he's pointing, saying, that was great. He's a good man, or something. And she's like, yeah, I know. And patting him on the back, like, yeah, he is. Something like that. And I'm going to play it one more time, and you can just watch yourself. So, like, it clearly looks like she is responding to the commentary of the fourth guy, or, well, the person at the end most, the guy at the very end here, and maybe even also, because it kind of looks like, the eye contact is hard to tell, but it looks like both guys that aren't Harry are looking at Meghan, saying something complimentary about him to her. Complimentary. Yeah, so obviously that's what she's reacting to, and she's just agreeing with him. It looks like she's just agreeing with them that, yeah, he's great, yeah, he did a great job, didn't he? and then a light pat on the back to her man. And so this is something that completely escapes body language guy's comprehension skills. He just has no like social perception ability, and that's his whole thing. Like, body language guy, that's your whole thing, and you're this bad at reading body language. That is such a natural thing. A guy goes, your husband's a good one, or that was a good one, something like that, and then she just pats him on the back, lightly responding, going, like, nodding affirmatively, like, yeah, he was great, that was great. And you're like turning that into her touch that is a cue for him to stop having fun. What? This is so like, this is like, you're a dumb person. Like, you're genuinely not smart, if that's genuinely what you think. Her response was so natural, and there is just nothing negative or bad or malicious about a wife agreeing with two men complimenting her husband that, yeah, my husband is great. That's what that looks like. It looks like compliment and affirmation and a light pat on the shoulder there. That wasn't anything that. But of course, I get it. I've said it so many times now. I'm really repeating myself a lot here. But of course, his whole thing, body language guy's whole thing, is I have to paint her as bad. So he can't even be honest about a thing like this. It has to be framed negatively. He's like, you're the one. Body language guy is the one being the weirdo, the bizarre one. It would be more weird, actually weird, if these guys are like saying what appears to be something like complimentary about her husband, and she just sits there. Like, her reaction was very sweet and normal. It was so normal. But of course he must vilify it, vilify everything she does. And it's just, I hope people who are like a little bumpkiny, we're all gifted with certain, skills and levels of intelligence. So people on the fence who are maybe they're not good at reading people, but they don't have maliciousness in their heart, who maybe would watch this and think, oh, maybe that is bad. I hope you realize it isn't. And of course, people who just hate Meghan, who so will, frame her dishonestly and negatively at every turn, even when it's, it makes no sense to. I mean, I'm not truly speaking to them, because they know what they're doing. They're not people I'm able to reach through to. They're not being honest, because this is like anyone with just basic intelligence watching that four-way interaction there would see it's just a sweet, everything about it was innocent, was sweet, was natural, the reactions were natural, the compliments from the men were kind, and Meghan being, just supportive of her husband by agreeing with them, seeming to compliment him, is just natural. And it's so, like, it's not just harmless, it's opposite, it's positive, it's sweet, it's good. It's how anyone who cared about their husband would react in that situation. And it's just body language guy's bread and butter and prerogative to vilify Meghan at every turn, even if it means being dishonest, and that's just the kind of dishonest and untrustworthy guy he is, because no sane person sees that. This is such a on top of everything, a misogynistic reframing. Like, just a woman touching her husband at all is something he's painting as negative, and this, like, calling her the shrew without calling her the shrew, where she's trying to stop him from having fun. How would that even work? It's a brief interaction of compliments and, commendation for the speech he gave, that's a naturally temporary interaction. There was clearly no intention for him to stop receiving compliments. It was support. Like, obviously that was a support. I mean, again, turning a woman's mere touch into something malicious. It's very gross. It's very misogynistic.
Like, you remember that touch? I've analyzed that touch on Harry a couple times. It's like a cue. You remember that cue? Remember what that cue means? That cue means stop doing whatever you're doing now.
So I guess he's saying that he has a history of this, which I guess should be unsurprising. And he's stating here that in the past he has assigned a misogynistic meaning to a perfectly benign interaction between a husband and wife, specifically tied to Meghan, in order to vilify her. It's kind of his thing. And it seems to be rooted in misogyny, because there's no logical reason to decide that a woman touching her husband's shoulder, as so many women have been caught on camera doing, famous and unfamous alike, including Kate Middleton. She's definitely been caught touching William on camera, his shoulder, his back, and but he's framed it in this way, where it's this shrewish thing she does to make him stop having fun, or make him stop doing what he's doing, even though in that video that is not what's happening. What he's describing is not what's happening. She pats him on the shoulder and he just is continuing with the interaction at a natural pace, in a natural way, and it dissolves at a natural rate. But he's saying lies that don't reflect what even he is saying, because he's a liar. Yeah. I hope the intelligent out there know this is at best a very stupid man whose very negative views of women have completely poisoned how he views them and their behaviors, so he sees every move they make, perhaps when they look a certain way, as malicious and wanting to control a man, and at worst just plain manipulative and still very stupid framing of a very normal behavior. But all of it is wrong. That's the takeaway. It's clearly inaccurate. Touching your husband is a very normal thing for wives and husbands. Yeah. So, I mean, just know that this guy is wrong and lying, and with the obvious intention of vilifying Meghan Markle.
Okay, that's the cue, and he literally stops what he is doing, and
no, he doesn't. He literally doesn't.
Okay, that's the cue, and he literally stops what he is doing, and she does it again. Okay, he is trying to engage with the man to his left.
There was no trying. He did engage with them, and the two men engaged with Harry and Meghan, and then the interaction ended at a natural pace. Blaming Meghan for the handshake not going on forever is just insane. It's like it has that thanks Obama energy. Maybe thanks Markle or thanks Meghan will be like its replacement meme, because that's the level we're at. This is an absurd accusation where it's like Meghan, in her terrible ways, daring to touch her husband's shoulder supportively, is so dishonest and so gross and mean and misogynistic. And look at his smirk. Look at his little smirk as he stares at them. knowing he's being dishonest, because this is the kind of evil bullying kind of guy who like gets joy out of being cruel to people, and he knows that's what he's doing. Hence the smirk. It's so vile.
And she keeps touching him, like, hey, I'm here. She's doing it again. I don't know why she's so needy doing it over and over again. It's uncomfortable to watch.
Needy, misogynistic dog whistle. And she touched him twice. She touched his arm twice, seemingly in response to comments made by the men who were engaging with the couple. I mean, it's not rocket science. So is this reasonable to people, to viewers, for a body language person, analyst, to only interpret a woman touching her husband's shoulder in this context as her wanting him to know she's there? That's the only interpretation that could be drawn, that could be made? That feels like a genuine interpretation to people. He doesn't even hide it. He like, the further I get into this, I've seen so many of his like thumbnails for videos. I haven't watched very many of them. This is like the first full one I've watched, being honest. And so, like, this is how it always is. It's just, there's not even, he doesn't even pretend to be balanced here. He's just, oh, she's touching his shoulder. That must mean she wants his attention all the time. Like, that's not a reasonable interpretation, period. And it's especially not a reasonable only interpretation of a gesture. And I don't, like, who, like, I mean, I was going to say, who is this for? But I mean, I think I've answered my question sometime back. But it's just so, because it's still under the guise of being a body language analysis or analyst who is, I mean, I guess he doesn't really pretend to be neutral exactly. He like calls them Harkles in his titles. But there is sort of an air of like, you know, it's the whole, with the whole get up with the suit, it's just so, it's so manosphere, it's so red pill community adjacent, which I mentioned earlier hours ago. Did not expect this video to be this long. But yeah, it's so, his motives are so transparent. They're just, it's so obvious what he's doing here. But again, it is worth calling out, so that's what I shall do. And I mean, in case it's not clear, obviously there's more reasons to touch your husband's shoulder than to want attention. Like, what? And especially in this context where it appeared to be a reaction to comments the men were making, even the handshake itself. You think they just shook his hand for giggles? It was a reaction to the speech he just made. They were clearly commending him. They engaged Meghan by complimenting her husband to her, is what it appeared to happen, and she engaged with them in a sweet and polite way, and then the interactions all ended in their natural way. And I know reasonable people see that immediately, but you know, just for those on the fence people, that's what happened here. If it's somehow not clear to you, and if this is also not clear to you, let me just say, quite plainly, the body language guy is a charlatan.
And well, he goes back to his usual head down demeanor of.
Wait, what the fuck? What is going on? I need a break. I'm sorry. That's insane. This is just brazen. This is just brazen lying. Harry was putting his head down because he was putting something on the ground. How? How can he have fans? How? I mean, I guess for the hateful, they're deranged. They don't. It doesn't matter what he says. It's like a hate club, like, you know, as opposed to a fan club. They meet and hate. But like, I feel like if I hated, I think of someone I hate, like this guy I don't care for, and if there were videos talking about him and they just started saying like stuff that was just not true, like, look at him with his beard, look at that beard and the way he's coiling his mustache with his fingers. Like, I'm like, this is taking me out of it. I'm all for criticizing this guy and even throwing out a few insults to vent my frustration, but you're just lying, just making up stuff that's not happening. That's not satisfying. I, I feel like this is where you have to be a little bit stupid for to be a part of this particular fan base, because like, even if you're going to be a part of a hate base where you're united in hate, you like, you need truth to be at the core of things. I mean, the basic truth. I mean, you can lie about interpretations to make yourselves feel better, but I'm talking about like lying about what we're seeing on the screen. He's literally bent over to put something on the floor, and this guy is saying, "Look at him in that sad, down demeanor," and everyone's just like, "Yeah." Like, I think of people I dislike, like Trump, and if someone said that about him, I'm like, I'm embarrassed for us. Is this what our side has resorted to? You're calling Trump bending over at him being constantly in a sad demeanor? Like, that's not satisfying for me. You just lying about what I'm seeing him do is not satisfying to me. It might be satisfying for the more dim-witted of our society, though. So that's weird. That's a weird, blatant, brazen lie. That's just, I don't. This is sad. I'm just gonna play it again. I'm gonna play it without his talking, because what? I just watch it without. I mean, at this point, the people who are, but okay. I'm just gonna play it. I'm just gonna play it now. All right, enough of me.
And well, he goes back to his usual head down demeanor of, well, let's do this. I already gave my speech and let's go back to my tense self again. And
I mean, Harry put something on the ground, sat back up in his seat, and then fully initiated and elected to put his arm again in his wife's lap. And body language guy says that was Harry being tense. But I think it's been well established that body language guy, not the best analyst of body language, ironically enough.
and well, all that she wants is to grab my hand. So there you have it. He gives his hand to her in the end. Well, here you have my hand. Let me talk to this man. This man look friendly, look interesting. Here you have my hand. Do with it whatever you want, and let me have some kind of interaction outside you. Okay? This is uncomfortable. This is, I mean, Harry should have a bit more leeway, a bit more freedom. He has to find freedom. Maybe that's a nice title for a book, Finding Freedom, don't you think?
And so that was him going into what I can only think to describe as boomer humor. You know, that sexist, misogynistic humor that really appeals to and was the like meat and potatoes of the boomer generation's sense of humor. It's in all their sitcoms. And then an attempt at a joke, kind of a pun sort of thing about the book Finding Freedom, I guess, and very unfunny. And I can laugh at a joke guiltily. That was not a guilty laugh joke. That was not funny. And I mean, he was doing that thing again of blaming the wife, in this case Meghan, for the husband's choices, in this case Harry. So him finding comfort holding her hand, resting his hand in or his arm in her lap. Very cute. They're an affectionate couple, but that's bad. It can only be bad because it's these two. There's no other interpretations offered. No other interpretations considered. It can only be bad. It's the classic man is just, I don't even know, brainwashed into doing what the wife wants him to, and he created a narrative there where Harry just wants to talk to this guy, this stranger, and Meghan is his irritation, even though their actual body language, their actions, contradict that narration he was doing. So I don't even know what the use of you is if you're not going to interpret the actual body language. I mean, of course we know, but it's still worth calling out.
And in the end, well, he's still trying to engage with a man to his side.
No, he wasn't. He was saying his goodbyes. And so was Meghan. They're leaving. Almost everyone around them is gone. It's over. Harry was the keynote speaker. He gave the last speech. They lingered a bit, it seemed, and then they left. As you do. From an event, you eventually leave. There was no further attempt to engage. It was just the handshakes of a goodbye. Body language guy, how do you not recognize that? Again, what is the use of you? Again, I know he's not being honest, and he's genuinely pretty dim, but I'm still gonna call out his follies. Still gotta do that.
And in the end, well, he's still trying to engage with a man to his side, and Meghan stood up first. Meghan stood up first. Let's go. Time to go. You know how it is. What Meghan wants, Meghan gets.
Why would Meghan standing up first be considered bad? I feel like that comes from a very extreme type of sexist mindset, like one of the more extremist religions where there are those rules that women should not stand up before a man in any context for any reason, because this is just the sensible order what we witnessed. Meghan would have to stand up so Harry could leave. Their assistant to Meghan's right stood up before either of them because she has to stand up for them both to leave. Everyone, well, not everyone, but most of the people who were seated around them have all gone. And they're some of the last people here. And then just the order in which they stand up to leave. There's a clear understanding for both of them that it's time to go. It's not like Harry was like, I want to hang out with my friends. And Meghan was like, we have to go now. It's not like a mommy-son thing. They're not at a park. They're not children. This framing of Harry and Meghan is truly insulting to both. And I suppose that's the intention. It's most harmful to Meghan, though, of course. But it's even infantilizing to Harry. What he's not a kid at a park who wanted to stay and hang around with some guy who he can't even see off camera. They were saying goodbye, which you were dishonest about. It's clearly time to go, hence why almost everyone around them is gone. And their assistant got up first, and none of this is wrong. Like, there is no correct order to leave. I mean, well, there is a logical order, which is the one they did it in, where Meghan stands up first because she has to start moving so Harry can get out from behind her in that direction. So it was completely sensible and logical, but this guy, this extremely sexist guy with this is so stupid. This is like extremely stupid and extremely sexist guy over here is like, Meghan gets what she wants because she stood up first. Like, was Harry in the middle of playtime and Meghan came over and pulled him by the ear and said, we have to go now? But I mean, she might as well have, because the reaction is that same energy. It's that severe and unkind and uncharitable. She may as well have grabbed him by his collar, even though what she did is so, again, benign. I'm using and reusing so many of the same words. Forgive me for all of the repetitiveness. But it's just true that the same point needs to be made over and over again, because he's doing the same thing over and over again. He's being very sexist, framing Meghan as this villainous woman just for standing up first, which again is the most logical way to leave and is not a bad thing. And it's like pushing to, I don't know, maybe some naive younger viewers, that there's a pecking order between the genders, between the sexes, of who is supposed to be the dominant one and what domination looks like. And in this idiot's worldview, the man just stands up first. He'll stand there waiting for her to get up because now she's in his way, but still just the symbol of him standing up first is what's important to assert his dominance as a man. Like, who could think this is reasonable? This is not a reasonable critique. It's not a reasonable assessment. They left in a very normal way, and these very unintelligent fans are like co-signing this completely illogical assessment that Meghan is somehow in the wrong for standing up first. Even though, again, sorry to repeat again, but it is the most logical way for them to exit, given the way that they are seated. She has to leave before he can, or start leaving before he can. So, I mean, again, I know the sensible understand that, and I know overwhelmingly the people who follow Body Language Guy are not very smart, on the dumb side, and definitely on the hateful side and unreasonable side, because none of these were reasonable assessments or criticisms, especially assessments. None of these were reasonable body language readings. These were all terrible body language readings, and terribly biased, sexist, illogical, irrational assessments of their behavior, just blatant lies about their behavior, literally lying about what we were actually seeing the couple do was part of this body language assessment. And there's a pattern here where it takes so few words to get things wrong, and it almost always takes so many more words. I've heard that in a way more eloquent way before than what I just said, but I'm noticing his video is like 10 minutes, mine is like 2 hours. I'm gonna break it up into parts. Maybe 2, maybe 3, but probably 2 parts. And it's like, that's the like exhaustion of dealing with stupid people and hateful people. There's an overlap there. It doesn't take much energy or really any intelligence to say just stupid wrong things, but it often takes a lot of effort and energy and knowledge to dispute wrong thoughts and wrong information, as I've just done. Which, I mean, didn't need to take this long, but I can be a bit verbose, I guess. So, I mean, again, I know the reasonable understand this, but I just also want to push back against this completely cruel and nasty, dishonest type of assessment. It's just so manipulative, and there's an irony in that, because this is the type of guy who is certainly one to likely label women as the manipulative sex. Like, would that surprise anyone? I'm sure he's done it to Meghan multiple times, but he is the manipulator. That's also the dangerous thing about this dynamic and this narrative being pushed by misogynists, where they make the good guys seem bad, and they make themselves, the bad guys, seem good. And I mean, again, anyone with a mind of their own, any intelligent person would recognize that immediately. But sorry to say about my species, there are a lot of members who are not very smart. They aren't. They exist in great numbers. So that's the danger here. And it is tiring to deal with this. But I do believe it is worth dealing with. For now, until I get burned out, because this is crazy. I really could have shortened this. Yeah, if I do another one, hopefully it won't be this long. There's just so much to correct and explain, but, hopefully I'll figure out how to master brevity in the future.
This is a short clip, but tells us a lot of the Harkle's dynamics.
No, it really didn't. It really was actually more of a Rorschach test. And it just exposed your deeply misogynistic biases and your sexist prejudices, particularly against women, but even against men to a much lesser degree, because the victim of a situation can be forgiven, even though it is infantilizing. It's still the better place to be in, especially because it weirdly does not hinder the perception of men as leaders. Men are weirdly, by this type, seen as the ones susceptible to the whims and wiles of a woman, but also they are the ones mostly considered the natural-born leaders between the two sexes. So, that infantilization, it doesn't really hurt men, really at all. It gives them an out and doesn't hinder the perception of them as strong and powerful and dominant and, again, natural-born leaders. So, yeah, this was just, again, it exposed your biases, it exposed your inclination to frame women negatively whenever possible, because there were so many moments where you could have been charitable and reasonable, and you very deliberately chose not to be. It wasn't even a question. Like, the idea that Meghan was just being a supportive wife was not even on the table. It wasn't even entertained as a possibility. It was just this far-flung, borderline conspiracy theory about Meghan just controlling Harry by existing as a human, doing normal human things like touching his shoulder, holding his hand, standing up to leave. Just that's the part that is dangerous, because weirdly it works, and it weirdly always has. The amount of humans in a given society who are unreasonable and have these misogynistic prejudices to the point where they're willing to hurt women because of these irrational feelings about them has always been the greatest danger to women, where they don't need like facts, they don't need solid proof of anything, they don't need proof or evidence before they can call women the modern day version of witches, narcissists. They don't need facts before they dogpile and, whip out the pitchforks. And that puts women potentially in a very dangerous position. Modern times are better, so that these women who get targeted are protected in ways that, their foremothers were not. But it still exists is still worrying, and it's disturbing, and it's disturbing the lack of critical thinking in a fan base, in this particular fan base, but in so many fan bases. The rampant spreading of misogyny, it just keeps women in a very precarious position. And of course, for the women who go along with it, the prejudice just outweighs the sanity. Women can be just as misogynistic as men, and they very often are. Perhaps they can't quite implement it in exactly the same ways men can implement their misogyny, or they're not as likely to, but they're still very often right up front in the crowd with those pitchforks for a targeted or scorned woman, with an intensity you'll never see for a man. I can't even, because we've had a whole, the planet, our world has had a whole history of men doing heinous acts and doing them like reliably. They're not that rare. Men routinely do objectively more terrifying, heinous acts, and it doesn't really dampen their reputation. It doesn't make people be any less awe of them, or any less trusting of them, or any less likely to give them the benefit of the doubt or root for them and their side when they're in trouble, or when they say they've been falsely accused. Any of that, they still, from the general public, they still tend to get the favor. So it's like we've had centuries of this, of men doing these things, and they still have that social upper hand, and a lot of other upper hands physiologically as well. And so I don't know that it is even possible to change it. But I will say that the glass half full perception is that there are, it seems, more voices that push back. There are more people to point out when something like this is happening and is unfair. And for the longest time, the crowds of people being in women's corner, on women's side, just begging the masses to be reasonable, to not dehumanize, to just show basic empathy. Those crowds were smaller longer ago, and they're a bit bigger now. A bit. Or they seem a bit bigger now. So there's that. And you should always push back. Just because life's unfair doesn't mean you have to grin and bear it. Because if you always take it on the chin and wear it, nothing will change. Even if you're little, you could do a lot. Don't ever let a thing like little stop you. Okay, this is so cheesy. But it's a good song. Tim Mitchum is a great writer of lyrics. That song was from Matilda, by the way.
And especially that gesture at the beginning, like he lets go of her hand, "Don't touch me," and she grasps his arm.
Actually, no. If you slow it down, you'll see that Meghan merely puts her hand on Harry's forearm. and he's the one who brings it to her lap to put on her leg. That was his choice. And when you speed it up, it kind of looks like she's pulling his arm, but she's not. She just put it there and he moved it there, and naturally that's what it's going to look like when his hand or his arm and her hand are moving together, with, again, as I said earlier, her hand like on the ride of his of the plane that is his arm. Yeah, it kind of looks like that, but she's not gripping him or pulling him. She's just, resting her hand on his arm, and again she does that later, and he doesn't move his hand or arm anywhere. So it's just some variation in PDA for them. But of course, I am speaking to a man who has no interest in the truth and is more concerned with pushing a very specific agenda and narrative that ultimately does the job of preserving the upper hand that men have in society.
Interesting, this Harkle's dynamics, and well, I'm sure that those will not be the last time. This is not going to be the last time we see them.
No shit.
My body language buddies, I hope to see you in another recorded video or another live with more information about body language and more details about human behavior.
Yeah, describing someone bending over to put something down as them returning to their sad, head down demeanor kind of showed your hand and revealed your uselessness when it comes to body language assessment. It's just like absurd. You're saying you're going to give more body language insights. You didn't give any. You had an agenda and you stuck to it. Clearly, no matter how they behave, you're going to frame all of their interactions with each other as negatively as possible. So, I mean, this is not a learning space. Like, one thing, I would love any fan to tell me one thing they could take away from this, that someone who they respect wouldn't laugh them out of a room for trying to argue is as valid. Like, it's all so junky. It's all junk science. It's not, junk science is like an overstatement, because it's not even attempting to be science. It's just a very uneducated man just rambling, knowing he can say anything, and it's not about how true what he's saying is. It's about the hate base that he's cultivated, who just like to hear nasty things said about Meghan. But that's basically the end of the video, and so that means that's the end of mine. It's already way too long, but these conversations and the things he says and does, they cause me to bring up relevant insights about this problem. Like, this guy, he didn't fall from the sky. His worldview, it didn't come from a whim. It's a very popular worldview. This misogyny thing, this distrust of women thing, this framing of women as ball and chain, burdens, attacking women to maintain that male upper hand. It's all very common, very normal, and that kind of guy pretty much gets to flourish on YouTube because there's always a big audience for it. There's always a big audience for the misogynists, always. It's the anti-misogynists or feminists who are like kind of the in a sense the underdogs. I guess all one can do is point it out, tell the truth, because it's always been here. So, which is weirdly comforting. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's and when I was a kid, back in my day, it was even bigger than this. Like, misogyny was even worse than this. So, you know, it's like teeny, teeny, teeny tiny victories, and then like these huge deluges of like reminders of how far we have to go. But, it could be worse, I guess, is the short version of all I've just said. It could be worse. That's the comfort, I guess, that it could be worse. You know, there, again, as I sort of touched on earlier, there was a time where someone like Meghan Markle would not have the protection she does. So, it's nicer. Not perfect. Still sad. It still sucks that these types exist, that they don't have this coming to God moment of, I should be kinder. No, they are very, this makes them happy. And as used to that as I am, it still always kind of alarms me um, to be reintroduced to that element. Those people with just almost no empathy, who just, and not just lacking empathy, but they like, because I just can't relate that thing of of joy at people's pain. This is the kind of guy who, like, I think he'll think about Meghan watching this and feeling hurt, and that like will bring him joy. And even thinking about Harry watching this and feeling hurt, that brings him joy. That's like a very, it's an old thing. I've like, before I could like quite articulate it, and before I was so aware of it as a pattern of a human type, I encountered that kind of person, as a kid. Till now, they've always been around. They're everywhere. And it's always so like a little shocking, even though they exist. So, I mean, of course, my utopia is one where they just have this like Grinch getting nicer moment of, their heart just grows. It's not like a war that I want, but, then there's the reality of they're not the kind of people who you can reason with or talk to, and they know exactly what they're doing, and that is the point. They enjoy doing it. So the only thing that ever controlled them was like public shaming, and yeah, that's about it. Public shaming, and and um and if it messes with their ability to support themselves in the world, but crazily, things are such that they can actually, get everything they want, where they get to do this harmful, mean thing and make money doing it, and a lot of money doing it, from, who knows, obviously from YouTube and that AdSense and everything. But then there are those theories about whose pockets they're in, and it's very lucrative. It's $1 billion business to just to attack Meghan Markle, and and then slightly broader to attack women. It makes absurd amounts of money in a way that attacking men just doesn't. People just aren't as interested, even if the man is like, you know, much, much worse, objectively horrifying. It doesn't, I don't know. I don't know why that is. That part, I haven't cracked that riddle of why people are so much more interested in seeing women suffer for perceived slights than seeing men suffer for perceived and even unambiguous slights. But solving that is not for today. Thank you for listening, and I really am so sorry for eating so much of your time. I really didn't expect this to be so long. Again, I do think I'll put it in 2 parts. and they'll both still be long, but less than this 2.5 hour monstrosity. So, yeah, thank you for listening. Again, I am Jane Einstein, your body language gal. That's Jane with an E, and Einstein with an I after each E. Oh, and one last thing. Remember, there are good people in the world too. And everybody dies, good and bad. So, yeah. Bye.